All right, so you've been digging deep into this whole Purusha thing, right? The cosmic being deal
Exact.
from ancient Hindu scriptures. And let me tell you, the stuff we're going to talk about today,
Yeah.
universe creation,
We're going deep.
society shaping,
Deep dive today.
sacrifice driven, all that jazz.
Absolutely.
So basically, we're here to help kind of synthesize all those research notes you've got and like that
Oh, yeah.
Wikipedia deep dive you did on the Purusha Sukta.
That's right. We're talking about the Rigveda, one of Hinduism's oldest
Gotcha.
and most sacred texts.
Mm-hmm.
The Purusha Sukta lays out this incredible vision of a unified spiritual universe.
I love it.
And how it all began.
So let me just say, the way that the Sukta describes Purusha is
It's wild.
kind of whoa.
It's meant to be.
This being with 1,000
Yeah.
heads, eyes, and legs,
It's
encompassing the entire universe, and then some.
meant to blow your mind.
Yeah, it's mind-blowing.
The imagery is really pushing us to think bigger.
Okay.
Purusha isn't just in the universe.
Everything. Okay.
That's why the hymn emphasizes both immanence,
Okay.
Purusha being present within the universe,
Gotcha.
and transcendence,
Okay.
Purusha existing beyond its limits.
Okay, I see how this connects to the idea of panentheism then,
Right.
where God is both within and beyond the universe.
Exactly.
Okay, but then the Sukta takes this wild turn.
Yeah.
And this is where I need your expertise. It says that the universe is born from Purusha's self-sacrifice.
Right.
How?
A powerful concept.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do we even wrap our heads around that?
The idea is that everything from the sun and moon
Oh, wow.
to the smallest creatures,
Okay.
even the very words of the Vedas,
Wow.
all come from different aspects of Purusha's cosmic form.
So,
Imagine this being willingly offering itself up
Yeah.
so that all of existence could come into being.
I can see why, like, some people might interpret this
Yeah.
as like a violent or even disturbing image.
Yes. There's definitely been debate about that over the centuries.
Okay.
But the Sukta seems to be emphasizing the selflessness of this act.
Okay.
It's almost like this ultimate act of love.
Oh, okay.
A complete surrendering for the sake of something greater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes me think about how creation and destruction
Yeah.
are often intertwined, you know?
Absolutely.
Not just in this ancient hymn, but in the world around us, too.
Yeah.
I mean, even stars have to die to create the elements for new stars and planets, right?
Exactly. That's why the concept of yajna, or ritual sacrifice,
Okay.
is so central to the Purusha Sukta. It's not about violence for its own sake,
Right.
but rather acknowledging this constant interplay of giving and receiving
Gotcha.
that underpins existence.
So it's less about literal sacrifice and more about understanding that everything is interconnected.
Exactly.
And part of this ongoing exchange of energy,
That's a great connection.
like how ecosystems depend on the give and take between different species.
That's a great connection you're making.
Yeah.
This concept of yajna resonates through so many aspects of life
I love it.
and even the natural world.
Okay, now there's another part of the Sukta that's been bugging me a bit,
Okay.
and I'm sure you can shed some light on it.
All right.
It mentions the 4 varnas, or social classes,
Right.
being born from different parts of Purusha's body.
Yeah.
That feels a little problematic, to say
Yeah.
the least.
I understand your concern.
Yeah.
That verse has unfortunately been used throughout history to justify rigid social hierarchies
Right.
and the caste system.
Exactly.
But it's important to remember that the meaning and interpretation of ancient texts have evolved over time.
So you're saying we should be cautious about taking every verse literally.
Absolutely.
Context matters a lot.
Context matters immensely. Many scholars believe that this particular verse was a later addition to the Sukta,
Gotcha.
possibly reflecting the social realities of a different era. We have to consider different scholarly interpretations
Right.
and approach these texts with critical thinking.
That makes sense. So how do you think we can best approach
Well,
potentially sensitive information like this?
it requires us to engage with these texts thoughtfully and critically.
Okay.
It's important to remember that the Purusha Sukta emerged from a specific cultural and historical context,
Right.
and that context matters immensely when interpreting its meaning.
That's a really helpful perspective, and it highlights the importance
Yeah.
of not just understanding what a text says, but also understanding why it says it
Absolutely.
and how its meaning has been shaped over time.
Exactly. And it's through this kind of careful consideration that we can appreciate the depth and complexity of these ancient teachings.
This is so helpful, okay?
Yeah.
I want to shift gears for a second and ask about something you briefly touched upon earlier.
Right.
The concept of Purusha's influence on later philosophical schools in Hinduism.
Right.
I know from my reading that Vaishnavism sees Purusha as a manifestation of Vishnu,
Yes.
and that the Rigveda school of thought explores this idea of interconnectedness
Yeah.
while still recognizing individual souls. How does the Purusha Sukta tie in to these different schools of thought?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it brings us to the heart of why the Purusha Sukta is so important.
Okay.
It's not just a creation myth.
Right.
It's a seed that sprouted a whole forest of philosophical ideas.
Okay, give me the lowdown on how this one hymn becomes so influential.
Sure.
Like, I need to be able to explain this to my friend.
Well, for Vaishnavism, the Purusha Sukta acts as a foundational text.
Okay.
They see Purusha as directly connected to Vishnu,
Okay.
the preserver god.
Right.
The hymn provides this beautiful and poetic explanation for how Vishnu brings the universe into being.
So it gives them like a sacred text to back
Yeah.
up their belief system.
Exactly.
Right.
It helps ground their understanding of Vishnu's role as the supreme creator.
Gotcha.
And then you have the Pedapeda school,
Okay.
which really digs into the mind-bending question
Okay.
of unity versus individuality.
Oh, yeah, I love that stuff.
It's like...
It's like we're all connected to this larger cosmic being,
Right.
but we also have our own unique experiences and identities.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a paradox.
That's a great way to put it.
Right.
And the Pedapeda philosophy uses the Purusha Sukta as a jumping off point
Okay.
to explore that very paradox.
Gotcha.
It's about recognizing that delicate balance between being part of something much bigger than ourselves
Yeah.
while still honoring our own individual paths.
This is blowing my mind.
It's a powerful concept.
So you're saying this one hymn from thousands of years ago planted the seeds for these really complex philosophical ideas
Absolutely.
that are still relevant today.
And that's what I find so fascinating about the Purusha Sukta.
Yeah.
It speaks to something timeless and universal
Yeah.
about our desire to understand our place in the cosmos.
Okay, before we get too lost in the vastness of it all,
Sure.
I want to circle back to the idea of yajna,
Okay.
or sacrifice.
Yeah.
It feels like this concept is central to understanding not just the creation of the universe,
Right.
but also how we live our own lives.
You're spot on.
Right.
The Purusha Sukta isn't just some ancient myth.
Yeah.
It's offering us a framework for understanding the world around us and our place within it.
So how do we, in our modern lives, connect with this idea of yajna
Right.
in a way that feels authentic and relevant?
Yeah.
It can't be just about offering things on an altar, right?
You're right. It's much more than that.
Okay.
It's about understanding the interconnectedness of all things, the flow of giving and receiving
Right.
that sustains life itself.
So it's more about recognizing the yajna that's already happening all around us?
It's like the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide between plants and animals.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Or think about the relationships in your life.
Okay.
There's a constant give and take,
Mm-hmm.
a sharing of energy and support.
Yeah.
That's yajna in action.
Okay, this is making so much sense.
Good.
So maybe the real challenge isn't whether we participate in yajna,
Mm-hmm.
but rather what we choose to give and receive.
Beautifully said.
Our time, our energy, our love,
Yes.
our willingness to let go of old patterns.
Mhm.
It's all part of this cosmic dance.
And that's the real invitation of the Purusha Sukta,
Yeah.
to become more conscious participants in this cosmic dance of giving and receiving.
All right, let's pause here for a moment to let all this sink in.
Yep.
I don't know about you, but my brain is buzzing.
I know what you mean.
Right.
It's amazing how such an ancient text can still spark so much thought and inspiration.
It really is.
Yeah, it really is remarkable how the Purusha Sukta still speaks to us after all these years.
I know, right? It's not just some like...
Ancient myth.
Yeah.
It's like it's giving us this way of seeing the world, our place in it, even how we relate to something bigger.
It's a framework.
Yeah, and that's what I find so intriguing about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not shying away from the
No.
big questions, the existential stuff.
Yeah.
When we're talking about sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
I keep thinking about how the universe,
Right.
according to the Sukta,
Yeah.
emerges from this incredibly powerful act.
Yes.
But it's not like a simple happy-go-lucky creation story.
It's intense. It's kind of intense. It's not your average bedtime story.
Yeah.
And you're right to point out that complexity.
Right.
The universe emerging from the sacrifice of this primordial being.
It's a lot.
It's a powerful image, even unsettling.
Yeah.
But I think that's what makes it so compelling. It forces us to grapple with those deeper questions about creation, destruction, the nature of existence itself.
I'm also curious about how this idea of sacrifice, of yajna, plays out in our own lives. Is it about, like...
That's a great question.
Constantly giving things up, denying ourselves?
Right. It's a great question, and I think...
That doesn't sound very appealing.
It's important to remember that yajna isn't just about giving things up.
Okay.
It's about recognizing the interconnectedness of all things.
Yeah.
Understanding that true abundance comes from a balance of giving and receiving.
Okay, so less about deprivation.
Right.
And more about understanding the flow of energy.
Exactly.
How we're all part of this larger web of interdependence.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting.
Okay, tell me more.
Because if we start to see yajna not just as an ancient ritual,
Right.
but as a fundamental principle of the universe, it changes how we approach our own lives.
So instead of seeing sacrifice as something we have to do, we can start to see it as something that's already happening all around us.
Yes.
And maybe even something we can consciously participate in.
That's a great way to put it.
Okay.
It becomes less about giving things up and more about understanding that every action we take, every choice we make, is part of this larger cycle of giving and receiving.
I like that.
It's about becoming aware of the energy we're putting out into the world.
Right.
And the energy we're inviting in.
It's giving me a whole new perspective.
Good.
I'm starting to see how even simple acts of kindness, of generosity, can be seen as a form of yajna.
When we offer our time, our energy, our compassion to others, we're participating in this ancient and universal principle. We're contributing to the flow of abundance and interconnectedness.
It's funny how we started off talking about the creation of the universe.
Right.
And now we're talking about everyday acts of kindness.
It all connects.
They're not so different after all.
That's the beauty of the Purusha Sukta. It connects the cosmic and the mundane, the spiritual and the practical, in a way that feels both profound and relevant to our lives.
Okay, I'm going to switch gears for a moment.
Okay.
Ask about something we haven't really touched on yet.
Okay.
The Purusha Sukta talks about how the 4 varnas, or social classes, are born from different parts of Purusha's body.
Yeah.
I'm guessing this is where the whole caste system thing comes from.
Yes, and it's important to acknowledge the ways this verse has been misused and misinterpreted.
So how do we approach a verse like that?
Right.
In a way that's both respectful of the tradition and also critical of its potential for harm?
That's a really important question, and I think it comes down to understanding the historical and cultural context in which the Purusha Sukta emerged. It's essential to remember that interpretations of ancient texts have evolved over time. We need to be aware of the ways those interpretations have been used to justify social hierarchies and discrimination.
So it's about recognizing that just because something is written in a sacred text doesn't mean it's meant to be taken literally or applied without question to modern society.
Precisely. We have to approach these texts with discernment, critical thinking, and a willingness to engage with different perspectives and interpretations.
I really appreciate you addressing that.
Of course.
It feels crucial.
Yeah.
Especially when we're talking about something as influential as the Purusha Sukta.
Absolutely.
But I'd love to go back to how this hymn inspired different philosophical schools in Hinduism.
Sure.
We briefly mentioned Vaishnavism and Bhedapeda.
Right.
Can we dive a little deeper?
Of course. Let's start with Vaishnavism, which centers around the worship of Vishnu. For Vaishnavas, the Purusha Sukta reinforces the idea of Vishnu as the supreme creator and sustainer of the universe.
Right.
It's this incredibly powerful hymn that speaks to their core beliefs about the divine.
So it's like this foundational text that gives them a scriptural basis for their understanding of Vishnu.
It's not just a story. It's a sacred text that helps shape their entire worldview.
Gotcha. And then what about Bhedapeda?
Right.
You mentioned it explores this idea of unity and diversity.
Yeah.
I'm still a bit fuzzy on how that connects to the Purusha Sukta.
Oh, the Bhedapeda school delves into the relationship between the individual soul, or Atman, and the ultimate reality, or Brahman. And In the Purusha Sukta, we see this image of Purusha as this all-encompassing being, the source of everything.
So the idea is we're all part of this larger cosmic being.
Exactly.
But we also have our own individual identities.
And Padheda tries to reconcile those two seemingly contradictory ideas.
Right.
They see the individual soul as both distinct from and inseparable from the ultimate reality.
It's a paradox.
Just like waves are both part of and distinct from the ocean.
Oh, okay. That analogy really helps.
Yeah.
So the Purusha Sukta provides this foundation for understanding how we can be both individuals and part of something much greater.
Precisely. And that's what makes it such a rich and compelling text. It speaks to this universal human longing to understand our place in the cosmos, our connection to something beyond ourselves.
This whole conversation is making me realize just how interconnected everything is.
It really is.
Not just within Hinduism, but within the world as a whole.
I think that's one of the most powerful takeaways from the Purusha Sukta. It's not just a story about creation.
Right.
It's a blueprint for understanding the interconnectedness of all things, the constant dance of giving and receiving that sustains life itself.
We've been really diving deep into this Purusha Sukta thing.
Yeah, we have.
Exploring.
We covered a lot of ground.
Cosmic creation to
It's been a journey.
The complexities of social structures, the relevance of yajna. It's been
absolutely
a wild ride.
It really has. And, you know, it strikes me that while we've been unpacking all these different aspects, the Purusha Sukta ultimately points towards this profound sense of unity.
You're right. It's like this one hymn is trying to show us how everything fits together.
Exactly.
The universe, humanity, even our individual lives.
And I think that's one of the reasons it's been so influential within Hinduism.
Okay.
It's not just a creation story.
Yeah.
It's a blueprint for understanding the interconnectedness of everything.
Right.
The dance of giving and receiving.
Yeah.
That sustains life itself.
Okay, but how do we, in our modern, often chaotic lives, connect with this idea of unity?
Right.
It can feel like we're constantly being pulled in a million different directions.
I hear you, but the Purusha Sukta reminds us that beneath all that surface, chaos.
Okay.
There's this deeper underlying unity. And it's something we can tap into through practices like yoga.
Ah, you're talking about actual yoga.
That's right.
Not just the idea of unity.
The word yoga literally means union.
Okay.
And when you think about the physical postures, the breath work, the meditation, it's all about bringing ourselves into alignment, creating a sense of harmony within.
So it's not just about stretching and getting a good workout.
Right.
It's about connecting to something bigger.
Exactly. And that connection extends beyond our individual selves.
Okay.
Remember how the Purusha Sukta describes everything in the universe as coming from Purusha?
Yeah.
Yoga is a way of remembering that connection.
Okay.
Of experiencing ourselves as part of this larger cosmic tapestry.
Okay. That makes me want to roll out my yoga mat right now.
I can relate to that.
But even beyond yoga, I mean, is there a way to carry this sense of unity into our everyday lives?
Absolutely. It's about bringing that awareness of interconnectedness into everything we do.
Okay.
How we treat others. How we interact with nature. How we make choices.
Gotcha.
It all matters.
You know, I'm starting to see how this connects back to the idea of yajna.
Exactly.
This constant flow of giving and receiving.
When we live with that awareness of interconnectedness, we naturally start to participate in that flow.
We see how our actions have ripple effects.
Right.
How our choices impact the world around us.
It makes me wonder if the universe itself was born from an act of self-sacrifice.
Yeah.
What are the implications for how we live our own lives?
That's a profound question.
Right.
And I think it challenges us to consider how we can contribute to the well-being of the whole.
Okay.
How can we make choices that benefit not just ourselves, but also the community, the environment, even future generations?
Wow, that's a lot to think about.
It is.
It's like the Purusha Sukta isn't just a story. It's like a call to action.
I think that's a beautiful way to put it. It's an invitation to live more consciously, more compassionately, and more connected to the incredible web of life that we're all a part of.
Well, I gotta say, our deep dive into the Purusha Sukta has given me a whole new perspective on things.
Really?
I'm walking away with a deeper appreciation.
I'm glad to hear that. For the wisdom of this ancient hymn and a renewed sense of wonder about my place in the universe,
And I hope our listeners are feeling that sense of wonder too.
I hope so too.
Because ultimately, the Purusha Sukta reminds us that we're part of something much bigger than ourselves.
Yeah.
Something truly extraordinary and awe-inspiring.
Thanks for taking this journey with us.
It's been my pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep seeking those deeper connections that make life so rich and meaningful.